Hi everyone! So, have you ever wondered what happens if you fall in love with a kitten you're fostering and just have to adopt it? Why is that called foster failing, and why is it seen as such a bad thing? Well, that's what I want to talk about today. We're going to go over the pros and cons of foster failing, my opinions on it, and some other information that I thought might be helpful. Foster failing is a term that refers to any foster animal that is then adopted by the home it was fostered in. As I mentioned, there's a bit of a negative implication to the word foster failing. I think largely the reason foster failing is seen as a negative thing is because adopting a foster kitten could lessen the chance that that person will foster again. In some homes, space becomes an issue. When a kitten reaches an adoptable age, it doesn't magically act like a full-grown cat, so it still needs all the supplies and space that it needed, a day earlier, which sometimes means a playpen or its own room to stay in. I know I ran into this with my foster fail kitten, the kitten I adopted after fostering her. Because this space and these supplies are taken up by now the adopted kitten, fostering can become that much harder. Another reason someone might stop fostering after adopting a kitten is because of illnesses. If you've been fostering for very long, you might know there are certain illnesses and that kind of a thing that a foster kitten can bring into your home. And that's not a huge deal if you don't have pets already, but if you do have a pet, that could quickly become a concern. Some people might not feel like they have the time to care for a resident cat and foster kittens. Now, all of these are valid concerns, and I think that if you're considering these things, that shows that you're responsible enough to think things through and make the best decision for everyone involved. If you find yourself in one of these situations, you don't necessarily have to say no to fostering right away. With a little bit of research and thinking things through, clear communication with your rescue, these potential issues could be worked through. Another reason someone might not foster after adopting a cat is because they're just content having a pet. They might find they prefer to have a resident cat and have them there permanently instead of a revolving door of kittens cycling through their home all the time. A lot of people choose to have a pet without even trying fostering first. So why is it that when someone has been fostering and decides they just want a pet, that they're looked on negatively? I want to cover both sides of this issue, so now I'm going to go over some of the positive things that can come out of foster failing. The first thing is that the kitten gets to stay in the home it's known almost all of its life. It's been saved and loved there, and it isn't forced to adapt to a new family or home. And we know that that kitten is getting the perfect home because it's been cared for in that home for maybe 2 months or more. Another positive is that the home is already prepared for a kitten. Those living in the home are already familiar with what it takes to raise a kitten, specifically that kitten, and they aren't thrown into it without really knowing what they're doing. In fact, they've gone through the hardest parts of that kitten's life with them. The third positive I wanted to cover is that this could lead to a quicker adoption. The foster home has already been vetted and the staff at the rescue know that kitten has been cared for well. The third thing I think is a positive with foster failing is that the kitten gets a quicker adoption. This foster home has already been vetted, it's gone through the application process of becoming a foster home, and so the rescue knows that these kittens are safe in this home. Probably the kitten has had several vet checkups at this point and everything has been monitored, so they know for sure that the kitten is safe here. A quicker adoption means that more kitten lives can be saved. For one, the kitten isn't taking up a spot in the shelter that another kitten could be in. Instead, they can just bring in a brand new kitten that otherwise would be in an unsafe situation. Now we've seen a little of both sides of this issue, so I want to go back to the negatives I mentioned earlier, because I think if we look a little bit closer, we'll find that they aren't such big deals after all. On the issue of having space and time, when I did adopt my foster kitten and foster failed, I did run into this a little bit when I brought my next foster kitten in. But learning to adapt to that and experiment a little bit really helped a lot, and I was able to work that out. I'm still fostering even though I have adopted a kitten. I completely understand people being worried about illnesses being transferred to their resident cats, but my rescue, for example, requires that foster kittens and resident pets are kept completely separate, which cuts down on a lot of that worry. But also foster a different kind of cat, such as a senior cat that maybe just needs to get away from the stress of the shelter, or maybe a kitten that is recovering from surgery and won't be there for very long, isn't a risk to your cat. The truth is that without adopters, foster parents and rescues would be in a pretty bad situation. Adopters, foster homes, rescues, and volunteers all have to work together to make sure these kittens get saved. If a previous foster home finds out adoption is the best option for them, even if that means they can't foster for the time being, they should go with that. In my opinion, fostering is not for everyone. It just doesn't work in every home for multiple reasons. Some people make donations or volunteer, others would rather just do their part by adopting. As long as the kittens go to a good home, rescuers are meeting their goal. Some homes are able to continue fostering after an adoption, and that's great. If you find out kitten fostering isn't something you're passionate about, or it just isn't right for you, it's the responsible choice to step away from that and move on to something else. In the end, all of those kittens that were fostered previously to that adoption were saved, and they met their goal, even if that goal was met through a foster fail. I got on Instagram again this week and asked you all for questions about foster feeling, so I'm going to answer a few of those now. If you haven't already, you can also follow me on Instagram. I am Kitten Impossible on Instagram as well. Someone asked me what my opinion on foster failing was, and I think I covered that today, but just as a summary, I think it's totally okay if that is the best thing for you. I think as long as you educate yourself and work to make the best decision for you and the animals involved, that is the best overall situation. I was also asked if I have foster failed. Yes, I have foster failed, which I kind of mentioned earlier, but I foster failed my first kitten that I ever fostered, and her name is Arwen. I adopted her on June 4th after fostering her for a couple of months, and I don't regret it. This is my foster fail, and she's about 4 months now, and very mad at me. She was busy looking out the window. The last question I have to answer today is if I would foster fail again. And yes, I would have no problem foster failing again as long as it was best for my family and my current resident cat. And I think that I am very passionate about fostering kittens, so I think if foster failing again meant I couldn't foster anymore, then that might be where I wouldn't foster fail again. But otherwise, I would have no issue with it. Thank you all for listening. I just wanted to talk about this because I've seen some videos that seem very negative towards foster failing, and I don't think that was their intention. I just think it got lost in the online communication. I want you all to be very understanding of everyone's situation and know that what's right for you isn't right for someone else necessarily. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments, what do you think of foster failing? What are your thoughts on these pros and cons of foster failing and your overall opinion of it?